Hello, 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 hello. It is Valentine's Day, February 14th, the year 2025. Mark Kulak, Houstonic.live. This is going to be a rapid show today. I got the content lined up. I'm not feeling 100%. What we're going to do today on this research show, I'm going to highlight all the areas of this one amazing document. A document, by the way, that just happens to be highlighted in a book that was regarding the truth about Wuhan. Yes, this document was actually referenced by that book. The RFK Jr. book that received scientific counsel by Jonathan Cooey. The title of the document is Broad Spectrum Coronavirus Antiviral Drug Discovery. It was initially received by the publisher August 2018, and it was accepted February 7th, 2019. So you could see it as something that might have been available, and I'll show how it was used in 2018, but it's really a 2019 document. The primary author, or the first person listed, is a Dr. Bavari Totura, T-U-R-A. The second person is Sina Bavari, last name B-A-V-A-R-I, who had a very long tenure with the United States government, U.S. military, and for at least 10 years, if not longer, was a scientific director of the United States Army Research Institute of Infectious Diseases, usually referred to as USAMRIID. I'm going to review the two authors in a little bit, towards the end. I'll just read the abstract here. The highly pathogenic coronavirus is severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus. Let's talk about redundancy there. SARS-CoV and Middle East respiratory syndrome coronavirus, or MERS-CoV, are lethal zoonotic viruses that have emerged into human population these past 15 years. These coronaviruses are associated with novel, there you go. I mean, again, another word that I missed, novel. It's seeding this idea, novel. Respiratory syndromes that spread from person to person via a close contact, resulting in high morbidity and mortality. So this document seeds a lot of ideas which were basically used. Where did the ideas come from? For example, we have highlighted here in the very first page, although SARS and MERS initially present as mild influenza-like illnesses with fever, cough, progression to more severe symptoms is characterized by an atypical interstitial pneumonia and diffuse alveolar damage. Both SARS-CoV and MERS-CoV are capable of causing acute respiratory distress syndrome, or ARDS, the most severe form of acute lung injury, where alveolar inflammation, pneumonia, and hypoxic lung conditions lead to respiratory failure, multiple organ disease, and death of 50% of ARDS patients. So it's highlighting that ARDS, acquired respiratory distress syndrome, is to be correlated with. Now, many people who were diagnosed with coronavirus or dealing with COVID, at least in the first year, I don't know what percentage, but more than a couple, okay, were really diagnosed by having ARDS. Some, they were having a low pulse oximeter. That was one of the things that people were told to worry about. What's the oxygen level? Put that little thing on your fingertip. And then if someone seems to be having trouble breathing, like if their condition, their ability to breathe deteriorates in the hospital, well, that's a good sign that they are probably dealing with the disease of COVID, of SARS-CoV-2. But ARDS, since the 1980s, and there are hundreds of documents that identify this, is the leading cause of injury in the emergency room worldwide, period. The leading cause of injury in the emergency room is ARDS, and it's caused by improper use of oxygen. That's it. So when you see videos from someone like a Cameron Kyle Seidel, who right now, by the way, is with the University of Florida, and I think working He's probably somewhere in the vicinity of some other people that we've studied. Saying that we need to give people 60 liters a minute. I mean, that's the video, and it went viral. No pun intended. These are horrible levels. These are levels of oxygen which cause scarring, and they were being passed off as, look, we have all this lung disease. And the reason why people got oxygen so early is because there was supposedly a ventilator shortage. They wanted people to think you needed more ventilators, and there weren't enough ventilators. So in order to keep you alive, because you have this low pulse ox reading or something like that, here's some oxygen. This happened in many places. Scott Shara strongly believes that the use of excessive oxygen was one of the main reasons why his daughter's health, Grace, deteriorated and why she is now dead. There's another amazing woman, Leslie Batts, who lost her husband. I think he was only 49 years old. Ridiculous high use of oxygen, and now he's gone, and their son has to grow up without knowing him. So this stuff is real, and it's incredibly irresponsible that so many people in the fake freedom, alternative, truth, health, whatever movement still won't say this. They're that cowardly, and I guess they just like the money, I guess. I don't know. But this idea was seated in this document here. Continuing on the second page, there's a whole paragraph where it just talks about how coronaviruses usually come from bats. The really bad ones come from bats. The ones that cause the most disease and the most lethality come from bats. But the good news is that a new one could come from bats that will be very novel, but we could probably focus on conserved regions of the virus relative to other coronaviruses we've studied. That whole idea was seated in here. Here's a paragraph here where they actually talk about wet markets. Wet markets in Asia, in China, where they're, slicing up the animals and so on. This is the most likely place where a worldwide pandemic from a new novel coronavirus could happen. Think of all the different scenarios that one could think of. If one were to even believe the RNA pandemic possibility, which RNA can't pandemic, this is incredibly specific to exactly what happened in COVID-19, down to the country, down to the working environment, almost down to the deli. It's very, very specific. It talks about zoonosis. You got your little Microsoft clip art diagram here. Who could argue with that? You see bat, you see a camel, and you see, it's going to be going to people after that. Matter of fact, this document's incredible because it actually is the first virus ever which is actually aware of Social Security benefit collection age in the United States. It just so happens that if you're age 65 or older, I guess the virus mutates or something like that. So people need to be worried if they're collecting Social Security benefits. They're more likely to, I guess, have a lethal problem with coronavirus. How convenient is that if a nation is trying to reduce the burden? And also, there's a whole paragraph in here on how MERS had its big breakouts in Korea. And for some reason, South Korea seems to be a place where the virus, if it were to emerge in the wet market in China, once it gets to South Korea, then it's going to explode and cause and really get out of control. And that's exactly what happened with COVID-19. I mean, the big super spreader event was in South Korea. It's incredible. It's incredible how accurate this document is. Going on, it talks about GS5734, which is the name at this time for the product which becomes known as Remdesivir. It describes GS5734, a small molecule nucleoside analog that has demonstrated antiviral activity in vitro against several viral families of emerging infectious diseases, including, and they basically list a couple that are Ebola. So there's Ebola variants and coronavirus. How are these two things even related? Efficacy of GS75034 in post-exposure treatments of Ebola virus-infected non-human primates led to inoculation and experimental therapy. So it actually references the fact that, giving this to some monkeys caused them to have some be inoculated, or be protected against exposure to whatever the virus was. It's very clear that the ability of remdesivir to work against a novel coronavirus has been established because of Ebola. Now, okay, I mean, even just looking at the cartoon diagrams, they don't even look the same. They come from different places. One has nothing whatsoever to do with bats, but it's clear that the antiviral work. Now, it's also interesting that it's also been said by none other than someone that Jonathan Cooey of Gigahome Biological will cover tomorrow, that Dr. Erica Ullman Sapphire, now of the Scripps Institute, previously of the Scripps, now at the La Jolla Immunology Institute, and she was also a key speaker at the Real Event 201, which we're going to be mentioning here. She said that the monoclonal antibodies, or the antibody work for SARS-CoV-2, was based upon study of Ebola. So, I mean, it's just kind of a shot in the dark, but there needs to be a very strong consideration of why are all things Ebola also coronavirus? Not only that, why are the same people who worked on Ebola also coronavirus? Why do the technologies that came out for Ebola seem to be working for coronavirus? Now, I'm not saying that there's an epidemic of Ebola. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that whatever is actually going on behind the scenes that isn't being told, it involves technologies about, this particular glycoprotein, I guess. And there's tremendous level of overlap. Continuing on, it actually suggests that multiple monoclonal antibodies may not even work. How convenient for a document that's going to be suggesting an antiviral is the way to go, as well as vaccines. The antiviral is only to hold you over until the vaccines, by the way. And it doesn't work because of there's multiple epitopes. Well, that's pretty crazy, huh? Because that's exactly the same challenge that they had with making a monoclonal antibody for Ebola. Again, it's more Ebola overlap. Same thing. And with Ebola, they had this monoclonal antibody that was called ZMapp. Coincidentally, one of the main scientists was Guangzhou Qiao, the person that was accused by Kyle Bass and Israel and a whole bunch of other people, Bannon and so on, of being some Chinese spy that was bicycling. No, she couldn't be bicycling because you have to get over the Pacific. She didn't look like she was in great shape, but from Canada taking Ebola and other stuff to China doesn't make any sense. Especially when you look at the people who trusted her the most, such as Francis Plummer, who, by the way, seemed to have been killed on February 2nd, 2020. But ZMapp provides, it's basically this triple-headed antibody structure, so it can target multiple epitopes. They're describing the same thing here, at least Alison Totura and Sina Bavari were. It then goes on to talk about, hey, guess what? We're going to need a modular platform for vaccines. How does this document even know? It's going to need a modular platform. And you know what that means? That means it's going to be a lipid nanoparticle, and then you're going to put the instructions inside. It means transfection. All right? Because the modular platform means whatever you're injecting is not ultimately what people are going to be immune to. People don't develop the immunity to the lipid nanoparticles. They develop the immunity to the protein that's expressed. So he's basically saying, Bavari and Totura, to Alison Totura, of course, a female, I should say they, that there's going to be mRNA and DNA is the most likely thing to work against a novel coronavirus that starts in a wet market somewhere in China, and then probably from a bat, and then leaps through a camel, causing a worldwide pandemic with the super spreader event in South Korea. This document is telling you almost the whole COVID-19 script. the very second reference is to Drosten. The very second reference is to the guy that, and the same team of people that wrote the paper of how to test for coronavirus, how to detect SARS-CoV-2. That was published on January 22nd, 2020. So the second reference is to one of the Christian Drosten report, I guess that's what it's called, is the second reference in here. How lucky is that? How well connected is that? Uh-oh. Something happened. I'm not broadcasting somewhere. Well, I'm not broadcasting somewhere right now. I just got terminated, I guess. But I'm just going to keep on recording. It's, almost impossible. Reference 15 is to a Ralph Baric paper. Yes, Ralph Baric is mentioned in many times in here. However, I'm just so curious if I'm still live on YouTube. I'm sorry. I'm not even going to check. This is discombobulated right now. So reference 15 is to the Menacheri Baric paper, which actually includes Zhang Shi as one of the co-authors. So not only is Drosten on here, but it's also sourcing from, the person that they call Bat Lady, Zhang Shi, in the Wuhan laboratory, is one of the source documents here. Source document number 15. And it's also worth noting, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, though. That the main author, Alison Totura, is, up until this time, the very last postdoc of Ralph Baric. Now, it's amazing how someone like a Dr. Kevin McKernan that says that everyone who's not willing to want to arrest Ralph Baric is basically a Ralph Baric something or other. Very awful words. But for some reason, Ralph Baric students, such as Alison Totura, gets a total pass from Dr. Kevin McKernan. There's no excuse for that. McKernan just doesn't want you to know that Ralph Baric's proteges, the people that studied under him, include Alison Totura, who, by the way, was on Jeopardy not too long before this, Alice Trebek. And now she's with BARDA. She has a pretty good role there. So if there's any concerns about Ralph Baric, they should also extend to Alison Totura and thus this document. But they don't, because they know that's going to be a nightmare. Because Sina Bavari, Robert Malone, Heinz Feldman, David Hone is a really nasty network. And Kevin McKernan doesn't want people to know about that. Reference 90 includes an Emmy DeWitt. And Emmy DeWitt is the person who first took the first photograph of SARS-CoV-2. So amongst the references, you have the person who wrote the SARS-CoV-2 paper of how to find it. Among the references, you have the person who actually took the photograph of SARS-CoV-2. Among the references, you have the Chinese scientist that everyone says is responsible, Zhang Shi. Among the references, you have Ralph Baric, who some say is responsible for making something, but RNA can't pandemic, so I don't know exactly what he made. And it also has a Heinz Feldman. And Heinz Feldman is someone that, again, you can't understand this mess. All I know is that he's been in the North Americas right now for like 25, 30 years. For many years, he's been the scientific director of the Rocky Mountain Laboratory under the NIAID of Anthony Fauci. I think he cooperates that with his wife, who's also a doctor. Both of them are from Germany, I think, Frederique Feldman. And under Heinz Feldman is Dr. Emmy DeWitt and her husband, Vincent Munster. People should know this stuff, but they don't. They just want to say Fauci bad, even though Fauci, whatever. Now Heinz Feldman, before coming to the United States and work at the RML, the Rocky Mountain Laboratory, was up in Canada, and he worked for 10 years with Guangzhou Qiao. Again, the Chinese scientist. She wasn't really a spy, I'm just going to say it, but accused of being a Chinese spy by the Steve Bannon network. You know, the same Steve Bannon that took New York, New Jersey, Li Mengyan, and had her run around pretending to have a Chinese accent, saying that she needs to tell her truth. You know that guy, the same guy that, hired all kinds of idiots on social media to not talk about the role of the drug epidemic. People like that. Anyways, and of course, Erica Ullman Sapphire. Now, note that this preprint was available by Real Event 201. And if you don't know what that is, I will open that one up here. Hopefully I can get this done in half an hour. Go to realevent201.com. Excellent. Real Event 201 took place in Hong Kong on October 14th to 18th, 2018. Real Event 201 was almost 365 days before the fake Event 201. Real Event 201 also included, by the way, Li Mengyan. Real Event 201 included Peter Daszak. The fake 201 didn't. Real Event included also Heinz Feldman, often a big name on this paper, as I've just been showing. Real Event 201 also included Malik Pieris. Real Event 201 also included Ralph Barrick, just like this paper that we're reading from Bavari Totura. Real Event 201 includes Erica Ullman Sapphire. Again, we just mentioned her. She said that the monoclonal antibodies for coronavirus are based upon the monoclonal antibodies for the spike protein for Ebola. Koopmans, of course, is on here. Kizzmekia Corbett. Oh, my goodness, say no more. Li Mengyan. Yes, I already said that. Sarah T.C. Elliott. Bart Hogmans, also a name that's on several times on this Allison Totura paper. Michael Diamond, Scott Weaver, etc. But the name I really wanted to focus on, and here's Li Mengyan, by the way, presenting at the Real Event 201, not the fake 201, the Real Event 201, with side by side with Kizzmekia Corbett, same background, same laptop, etc. Let's scroll down here to the last day on the schedule. It's the last day or the second to last day. Thomas Killar from Gilead Sciences. He's actually I think he's he's one of the vice presidents, or he's very much in charge, I believe, of their antiviral group, which means he's in charge of Remdesivir. At least he was at this time and early in the pandemic. And he gave a short talk. Broad-spectrum antiviral Remdesivir for the treatment of emerging viral infections with high outbreak potential. In other words, he was presenting this paper in October 2019. He was presenting Totura's and Bavari's paper. So not only is this a paper that is incredibly significant, is in the most recent RFK Jr. book, who was just nominated for director of HHS, but also it was even being referenced at the Real Event 201, realevent201.com. No spaces, no dashes, realevent201.com. Most of it's been scrubbed. I've worked tirelessly to get everything I could on the particular subject. You can actually find a poster abstract for the Bavari Totura paper, and believe it or not, it's on the KeystoneSymposia.org, and that's remarkable because that's the very same website that I used to get as much archived information as possible about Real Event 201. By the way, Real Event 201, coincidentally, took place it was only like a 10-minute drive in Hong Kong from the super spreader where the fish market guy was spreading SARS back in 2002 or 2003. That's right. The super spreader for SARS 2003 event was actually in room 911, and the zoonotic event was actually 365 days after September 11th, 2001. So try that one on for size. And it's also, I did have evidence on this. I have to say that because I couldn't find the evidence on it today, it's speculation. But I was pretty sure I saw it, that this paper was actually used. The existence of this paper, which is purely theoretical, there's no testing or whatever lab work involved at all, as one of the bases for providing compassionate use of Remdesivir to Snohomish County Man, America's patient zero. Again, we know who Snohomish County Man is. I actually think it's a Chinese scientist that was flown to Seattle, and he played a role and textbook recovery, remdesivir, and therefore that was one of the main things that allowed remdesivir to go forward into trials and be a standard of treatment, along with, of course, the domain program that was run at the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, United States of America, spun up by Robert Malone, and one of the key architects on that was David Hone. Feldman, Hone, Bavari, Malone. Feldman, Hone, Bavari, Malone. Just those names. They're all here. Most of them were not born in the United States. They're all here with their wives. They all have diplomatic immunity, and they're all basically taking U.S. taxpayer money and in charge of these programs, which controls what gets injected into Americans and it results in murdering Americans. So, I'm not in a position to charge them with any crime, but there you have it. And let's just say, how much does someone need to get paid to be okay with that and stay quiet? Well, you should ask people like Kevin McCarran. The last thing that I will comment on is just the authors themselves. Bavari Totura, of course, I just mentioned that a little while ago. Last postdoc of Ralph Baric. There's no excuse for people not to be talking about this document if they think Ralph Baric is responsible for the whole thing. Sina Bavari, of course. I think he was actually a boss of Bruce Ivins at one point. How about that? How about them apples? Sina Bavari also did a variety of very he had some lab violations at USAMRIID in 2019, which I think some of them were actually staged in order to create suspicion that it was a lab leak. This whole idea of a cyclist or whatever, and so Bavari being involved, and I thought that was a possibility as well at one point based upon the evidence that was put out there. Thank you, Sina Bavari, for being part of creating that series of events, tracing it right back to the United States, something that couldn't even RNA can't pandemic at all. But thank you for spinning everyone's wheels. Well deserved, well played. So I'm sorry I'm not feeling better. It is Thanksgiving. Did I say Thanksgiving? It's Valentine's Day. So forgive me for the early exit. I love you guys very much. God bless.